Strength is the willingness to grow, the willingness to receive feedback, to live more truthfully, to be more fair, to be more kind, to change course when we need to. That's uncomfortable. And that's why a lot of us resist it and get mad at our partners instead for not giving us the picture of ourselves we want. But if you really love and you really care about the person opposite you, you're willing to let them talk straight to you about who you are. You're willing to consider sincerely what they know about you or experience of you that you can't see as well. A lot of times we shoot the messenger, but if we are strong, if we have courage, if we love, if we care about our impact, we're willing to actually tolerate that puncture to our egos.
Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. Today, we have Jennifer Finlayson-Fife. She is a fan favorite. If I scroll back through my podcast analytics, the ones with your name on it are always the highest. I am not offended by that. I'm just super grateful for your time. So thank you.
That's awesome.
I want to start with two things. Number one, I want to acknowledge that I am orienting this podcast toward high achieving men because that is my clientele. But I know when you use the podcast, it will be delivered to all types of audiences. So anybody who's listening, I really want you to think about using the filter that works best for you or the language that fits better for you. Although I will ask the questions through the lens of my audience.
Sure.
Also, I want to give you just a minute to share anything you have going on with your business right now, because I will post this podcast very close to recording time. So if there's anything current that you'd like to talk about.
There is. We are having a men's retreat in Southern Utah in St. George. I love this retreat. These are like amazing men who come, who want to deal with who they are as a person, how they relate to sexuality, how they relate to a partner if they're married, and how they can be better. And so it's just one of my favorite things that I do because I'm talking to men a lot about how to love better, how to have more integrity, how to be more at peace with themselves as sexual beings, as, as men. So I guess what it is about a retreat, like I don't think of men as the type that think, oh, I'm going to go to a retreat, it's not very typical, especially for busy men doing a lot in their lives. But I think it's this opportunity to just pause for a moment and take a deeper look at who you are, how you can bring more strength to your relationship, to your life. And these men love it. I mean, they're so awesome. They make me appreciate how good men can be because there's a deep earnestness there and genuine, nobody's posturing or pretending. So they're awesome. So anyway, that would be the biggest thing I'd talk about.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. I think I would add that if this podcast resonates with you, you might be the one who would like the St. George retreat. Like if this one resonates with you, this would be a gateway to something like that.
Exactly.
And so if you're interested, just go to Jennifer's website. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Finlayson-Fife.com. Yeah. Okay. And you can see it under events.
I'll also say this. I think you're right. Most men aren't sitting out there like, oh, where's the retreat I could go to? But I'll tell you what I've seen that I think is true. There's a lot of men, especially busy, high achieving men who are sitting around saying, I actually feel really lonely outside of professional and work relationships. I feel really alone. And these retreat situations are so healing and connecting for the person who might frame it that way.
That's right. These men actually become really good friends because they're being real and you kind of can connect to each other's humanity. So a lot of them, just kind of stay in the thread that we have like a WhatsApp thread and they keep talking to each other and if they want to. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've heard good things about those threads and the Marco Polo threads as well. Many of my clients go to your stuff, your retreats. And so I get a little envious. They're like, oh, in the JFF Polo, we did this, or we said this, or I got this feedback. So there is a bit of real connection and community and friendship that comes from that.
Yeah. That's great.
All right. Super long plug for the retreat, but go check them all out because I always get great feedback. Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive right in. This is a question that I haven't warned you or prepped you for. So we're going to take whatever answer. And in fact, I actually really prefer that. I don't want this to be like a definition that we Google and we get it. Mm-hmm. then we'd all just do that, right? You're so much more articulate and in depth than that. So I would love it if you would share with us to start this conversation. If somebody came up to you and said, hey, Jennifer, we are going to do this dictionary that is all about connection and relationships. It's like the Bible of connection relationships. And one of the terms we're going to include is mature masculinity in relationships.
Yeah.
What would you love to include beside this phrase or term?
Okay, so let me make a couple qualifiers just to understand it. So there is one way to think about that, which is what is a mature way to be a man? And then there's what's a mature version of yang in the kind of yin yang sense, which is two different things. So let's just talk about what it means to be a mature man, because every man on this planet has a mixture of yin and yang, or masculine and feminine energy, intelligence, capacity, right? Like my husband and I are a mixture, each of us, of yin and yang, masculine and feminine. There's ways that I'm more masculine than he is in that kind of Taoist interpretation, and he's more feminine, and vice versa. So if we are going to say, what is a mature human, right? Or a mature man? A mature man is able to accept himself as he is in whatever form that is. What are the gifts God gave you? What are your capacities? How do you orient to the world? And you're able to be at peace with yourself for two reasons. One, because you have developed those capacities. You are at peace with it because you have grown those capacities into a way to make the world better through those gifts. So you accept yourself because you've developed those gifts, and you accept yourself because you have integrity. You don't use your capacity to exploit others, to take advantage of others, to make others small. Immature masculine wants to dominate. It wants to prevail, and it will push people down to prevail. It will use hatred. It will use humiliation. It basically is trying to feel bigger than. It's the bully position. That's immature masculine. Mature masculine is actually so at peace with himself that he does things to help others thrive, to help the feminine thrive, to help children thrive, because he uses his strength for all in the group to be well, to be safe, to live out their gifts. So one way of thinking about it is that the masculine kind of faces outward and protects, so that the feminine or the more vulnerable parts of society can radiate, can thrive, can be okay. Because the feminine is life, right? And so the masculine does what it needs to allow the feminine to thrive. And so mature male, mature adult does that, right? They don't do anything to humiliate or undermine the thriving of others. But specifically masculine, again, is it's a protector of life, and feminine is life. And so feminine is growth and beauty and development. They'll say in Taoism, the masculine is the frame, the feminine is the art. Right. The riverbank is the masculine. It contains and holds and structures. The feminine is the river. Right. So there's a lot of that where in Taoism, we need the yin and yang to really understand what godliness is, to understand like a deeper wholeness within ourselves. And sexuality, I mean, we're not going to sexuality necessarily, but so much what good sexuality is this yin yang reciprocity that allows both to step into their bliss, into their freedom.
There's so much power in that. And I'll just reflect back something that I think you said, and please correct anything that I don't get quite right, is there's a piece of the masculine and feminine that we're always balancing internally.
Yes. That's
and
right.
Then there's the masculine feminine in relationships that
That's
we're
right.
also projecting externally. And so it almost becomes this dance of how we're doing internally becomes like foundational for the way to execute it externally. Tell me what you think about
100%
that.
that's true. I'm working on a book, and I'm writing about this very idea that when we are immature, it sounds like I'm dissing humans. We're all on some level immature because we're in a developmental process. But when we are younger in our development, we are needy. And we need people to tell us we are okay. And as long as we are looking to other people to make us okay, like in a chronic fundamental sense, we are going to be incapable of intimacy, of investment in another person because we need them too much. And immature masculine needs to be needed. And that is still a needy position. I need you to see me as the strong one, the able one. I need you to tell me I'm good at sex. I need you to make me feel like I'm your man, you know? And so it's got a dependency in it that's trying to look independent. Right. And so as long as we're trying to work out, and look, we're all doing this on some level. So have mercy on all of us. Okay. But it is to the degree that we're looking for to others to answer the question of our sufficiency, we're not able to know and love them, not fully, not in a mature way, not in a way that really makes our lives freer and more joyful.
I love that. I also appreciate that you said, listen, we're in a developmental process here.
Yeah.
And some people will say, well, how do I know if like I'm growing or if I'm just like kind of losing myself here? I think if you're alive and breathing, you're in a developmental process.
Yeah, you at least can be. And what I would add to that though is that, you know, I talk about in my book both Eros energy and Thanatos. Eros is stepping into life. It's willing to let life grow you up. You're willing to integrate more truth about yourself, about the world, about your partner, because that truth keeps you evolving and accommodating more truth into your soul and sense of what's true. Thanatos is the opposite. It's pulling inward. It's more hostile. It's more refusing to let life teach you. It's angry at life for what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's basically a rejection of information. I want the world to yield to me. I'm not going to yield to the world. I want the power within me as I am. And so that Thanatos is our refusal to grow.
Yeah.
And so for those in a religious context, I'm often saying, you know, sin is the refusal to grow.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Mm-hmm.
So just so I make sure I'm clear in my head. So
Sure.
in this Eros, we are still in this developmental process. It's just we're allowing the world to do it. And we're saying, I'm going to look at these reflections of myself and I'm going to use them for good rather than shut down, hide, and demand everybody else tell me I'm good.
Exactly. Lie to me, make me feel the way I want to feel, and then I'll like you back. That's Thanatos. If it's like, look, I'm willing to deal with what is true about me. I'm willing to consider my impact on you. I'm willing to stand up what I see about myself through your eyes against my own integrity, against my own sense of right and wrong, and deal with what I see there. That is strength. Strength isn't about being without fallibility because none of us are there. Strength is the willingness to grow, the willingness to receive feedback, to live more truthfully, to be more fair, to be more kind, to change course when we need to. And that's uncomfortable. And that's why a lot of us resist it and get mad at our partners instead for not giving us the picture of ourselves we want. But if you really love and you really care about the person opposite you, whether that's a child, a spouse, a sibling, a friend, you're willing to let them talk straight to you about who you are. And you're willing to consider sincerely what they know about you or experience of you that you can't see as well. Because when we're in that first person experience, we have a self-justifying mechanism that's always there telling us what we're doing is basically right enough, you know, or justified in some way. But when the people we love are dealing with our limitations, they've got a clearer view of our self-deceptions. And so a lot of times we shoot the messenger, but if we are strong, if we have courage, if we love, if we care about our impact, we're willing to actually tolerate that puncture to our egos. And I'm imagining your group of listeners who are successful and so on, there's probably a real divergence there because sometimes people are successful because they can tolerate being wrong and they can tolerate the feedback and they can tolerate like, okay, I got that wrong. How am I going to do it better? And so they expand their capacity through their willingness to see what's uncomfortable to see. There's other people that are just sort of gifted, or they kind of fall into that capacity, or they're kind of accustomed to getting people to yield to them. They can be tougher to be married to because they are used to the idea that I'm smart enough, dominant enough, whatever enough, that you should just do what I think. Everybody at work thinks I'm great. What's your problem?
Yes.
That can be a challenge because children and spouses don't often yield in the same way. Mhm.
Absolutely. It's so much easier for that type of person to just stay in the echo chamber of their own justification and the validation of others who don't have to share a life with them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just keep staying at work because everybody seems to like me there. Yeah, exactly.
But oh, by the way, I feel like a fraud because my life is falling apart outside of
Yeah.
work, and I don't want anybody to see that. So then I will demand that much more for you to validate what this other part of my
Yes.
life. It gets so tricky, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. I want to ask one more clarifying question about the Thanatos. Um,
Mm.
sometimes my clients, I think they're in this state too. They'll say, well, it feels like if I have to look out for the good of all in the group, or if I'm really trying to make the world a better place, then I have to lose a part of myself in order to provide this thing externally.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think
Yes.
that's what you're describing. Can you speak just maybe a little
Sure.
bit to the person who might feel that they're losing themselves when they offer this?
Yes, and I think there's certainly a female version of this as well, right? Like
Yes.
if I'm going to be a good parent and I'm doing all these things, what about my life, my desires? What about the things that matter to me? And what I would say is that all human beings are in this tension between belonging to themselves and belonging to their group,
Mm-hmm.
because we are all individuals, and human beings don't want to betray themselves. They want to be true to their beliefs. They want to be able to be honest. They want to develop their capacities, but they also want to belong. They don't want that to threaten belonging. And for some people, there's less tension there because they happen to fit many of the ideals of their group, right? And for others, that's much more painful because they don't fit those. But we're always in that tension. And so when we are younger in our development, it feels like one or the other, like one of those is going to win. Either I'm going to do what my family needs or I'm going to do what I want. But the truth is, as we mature, we start understanding that they are two sides of the same coin, and
Yes.
that you can't betray your family and be true to yourself. And conversely, you can't be true to your family and betray your own gifts and desires and the best in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of times when it feels like it's one or the other, it's being driven more by fear than it is by courage and honesty.
Mm.
Right. So, when I work with women on this issue, a lot of times it's like, well, the truth is they're afraid of their desires. They're afraid to ask the family or themselves to give energy to a desire or a wish. And so they would rather kind of do the martyr. I'm just going to do what the family wants, but they don't acknowledge the safety that's in that. I don't mean it's truly safer, but like it's a way of hiding from the question of their responsibility to their own development. So they give and give and give, but it's actually a way of not dealing with their own fear of growing and taking deeper responsibility for their lives. I can do the other version of it. There's sometimes when you may know that it is really the right thing to give up the project you want to do, give up the business development idea because it's asking too much of your family. And in your heart of hearts, you know what your spouse is saying is fair. And so then, even if you give it up, then you can kind of resent like they made you do it rather than your conscience made you do it. The best in you asked you to do that because it's easier to make them like, if it weren't for you, I could have everything. I could have all the things I want and I could just be great, rather than dealing with the hard thing about life is that we are finite beings in a finite world and we get to only choose one path at a given time. And there's always losses and advantages to whatever that path is. But that's all we get. And that's hard. I think that's hard to live in finiteness. Those, especially that have infinite dreams and infinite desires and are good at desiring, which may be your crowd. that listens to you, right? Maybe that's their strength, right? And so to live in the finiteness of, I want to be married, I want to have children, and I want them to be happy with me, but I don't want to have to make sacrifices for them. That's often the fantasy that we're in, and we don't get to have both. And so we have to decide, what am I going to choose? But in the choosing is the effort to be true to yourself. You have to choose where you're going to stand and what you're going to tolerate losing.
Yeah, I love my crowd. I want to say that I adore
Yeah.
my crowd. And
Mhm.
I think what you just said is spot on.
Yeah.
I think what I hear you saying too, if we can frame this in a way where we can truly see that even when we choose something that serves the greater good because we think it's right and good, then in that choosing, we actually get to see parts of ourselves that are uncomfortable with that or maybe feel afraid of that. But it's actually honoring those and integrating those less mature parts. So I don't know if I'm saying this right because it's kind of meta to think about, but
Mm.
even in the sacrifice, it shows us a version of ourselves that we then get to connect with and grow
Yeah,
stronger.
definitely.
And so
Definitely.
it's almost like, even if it feels like a quote loss in certain ways, it's also an opportunity to anchor in
That's
to
right.
our strength. And so it's still choosing to
100%.
grow ourselves up and be
Yes,
more solid.
absolutely. So every time we sacrifice something, we are growing something else. And it doesn't mean that it has to feel good what you've given up, because it is painful to give up things that also are legitimate. I don't know, like I remember the people that were teaching lessons about time management would get this, like they've got like the sands and the rock and the sticks and so on. And
Yeah, yeah.
basically the idea was like, if you put it in the right order, everything gets to get into the jar. And the lower IQ people that put the sand in first and the other stuff on top, that obviously the prioritizing. But the idea though that is actually true about life is we have way more stuff we want to put in that jar than can actually get in the jar. There is no
Yes.
jar big enough. We get a finite reality. And so we have to deal with the fact that it's even deciding what we want to get into that jar. Then there's the issue. Prioritizing, of course, matters, but we have to tolerate that. And I think that it is absolutely true that what we do turn our attention and our focus to, then it grows. It becomes something in our life that we get to experience and have. But it does require saying no to other things. I mean, something as
Yeah.
simple as anything that, your listeners have created in their lives meant that they gave up other things. If you want to learn how to play tennis better, you're giving up time that you might be doing other projects to just practice and practice and practice the stroke of the tennis racket. So it's like you have to give up things to create things. It's just determining, what am I going to give up and what am I going to create?
Oh, that's so powerful, because what I think happens from my crowd is sometimes they think that they're going to have to give up some image of success, whatever that
Yeah,
means. And to them, they oftentimes have learned that that is their value. So it almost
exactly.
intuitively
Hmm.
feels like I'm
Yeah.
giving up my value
Mhm.
if I do this thing to grow the marriage or grow the relationship. And it's so hard for them to untangle that.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I would say is the developmental moment.
Yeah.
Because I talk about, when we make this transition, and most humans don't actually make it, where we go from a reflected sense of self
Mhm.
to a more solid self. And those of us that have like done success, known how to be that part, haven't maybe realized how dependent we are on people saying, wow, you are so good at that. You do that so well. And so because it looks like, I'm just skating along here and it's going great, you don't see the dependency on other people's approval that's implicit. When you see it is when you have to make a decision that may cost you that, to do what's actually needed, to do what your conscience is telling you is the right thing to do. And that's when we really get tested about, what am I going to make more important? Other people's opinion of me or my opinion of me, my
Mhm.
conscience. And
Yeah.
when we've been deeply dependent on that, it can be really hard, and we will fight it, and we'll keep calling this pursuit of approval strength rather than listening to our deeper selves. That's the truly strong people. And I have nothing against success or enjoying people's good opinion of you, but are you willing to give up more important things for it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it almost seems like some people can't even hear their conscience anymore because of that. And so they might even mistake like what they've taken on as their value or their identity for their conscience. And so it takes a lot of courage. I'm going to use some of your language, a lot of courage to really sit with that and feel that.
That's right. And a lot of people won't and don't. I mean, I work with those people. They just don't want to hear it. They would rather fight everybody than look at themselves more honestly. And so it's scary. It's hard. You know, I mean, the Christian reference of you lose yourself to find yourself. A lot of people put that in the martyr frame. You just like go around and just think you're terrible. And then in the next life, you're going to like get some reward for that. I don't think that's what it means. I think you lose your ego, your preoccupation with how you're seen, your preoccupation with fame or fortune or whatever that kind of props up your fragile self. You lose that. You find something way more meaningful inside of you. Like you become more trustworthy. I see it happen all the time when I work with couples where the couple often goes into crisis when they're the most malleable. There's something that's happened that's really challenged the understanding in the marriage. And when couples use that well, they use it as a chance to take a deeper look at who they each are and to be more honest with themselves and to deal with their part in the immature marriage. And what happens is that the people not only grow into someone that's more trustworthy and more capable of love, they also grow into someone more capable of intimacy. I'm willing to let you know me. I don't have to hide things because I feel more at peace with myself. They grow into someone who likes themselves better and they like their spouse better. So like it's like win, 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 win. There's like 5 wins I just named there. There's a lot of good that happens in that, but it's terrifying and it's painful because you have to let go of things you've been rather attached to, ideas about yourself, ideas about your marriage, ideas about how you were justified. And you have to put them on the altar in a sense to find something that you need even more than that.
I love that. When you were saying, you know, you lose yourself to find yourself, I was like, I wonder if the relationship version of that is when you sacrifice something for the good of the relationship or the marriage, then it will show you the discomfort that you really need to deal with.
Yeah.
And enjoy the wins that you just
yeah. 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 You grow into your discomfort. Like everything we do that when we produce something meaningful, we're almost always in some period of discomfort before the birth of that reality. And it's that tolerance of discomfort. I have a son who's had a lot of, you know, in the anxiety of things, he would sit back and think and think and think and think there's going to be a moment where I'm going to have everything thought out and I'm going to not make a mistake. And because he just had a high reaction to his fear, I think is really what it is. He has started doing a lot of climbing and lead climbing and just things like that. And so what I was saying to him the other day is probably really good for you psychologically because it is a lot of tolerance of discomfort and just getting used to being in that discomfort to create something that matters to you. And we get better at it the more we do it. And so the more we like tolerate, okay, I'm wrong. Yeah, that's not what I thought. Or I don't feel in control of all of this right now. The more we can kind of settle ourselves down in that, the more capacity we actually have, the more capacity we can even grow beyond that. So it's a real virtue.
Yes, settling ourselves down in the discomfort allows us to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Okay, so I can hear some of my listeners asking this question. Okay, I hear you guys, settle myself down, sacrifice shows me myself, but what if she really is wrong? What if she really is being mean to me?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Definitely.
because they're going to want to.
It never happens. Women are always virtuous. I'm just kidding.
But so can we speak to this? Because sometimes I think we perceive them as being mean and wrong, even when it's just our immaturities, like just demanding to be validated. And some think there is behavior,
100%.
like you're saying, that we don't want to tolerate. So do you have any thoughts about maybe the way I wrote this question when I submitted it to be discussed today was like, sometimes we focus more on being loved well than loving them well.
Oh,
and
definitely.
I think this is one of the fears
we all do that.
if I focus more on being loved well, then maybe she's going to be really mean to me and I just slide. So what would you say?
Okay. So I do men's groups where, you know, and women's groups where like have 12 men and they bring their case and I work with them in front of the other men and so on. And so there's some situations in which I have said to men, well, in this context and other contexts, that she's not choosing you and she's not going to choose you. I don't see any evidence that she wants what you want from the marriage. Or I've said, your spouse is unwilling to self-confront. Like, no matter what you're doing here, she just won't do it. And it's a wake-up call for them because they want so much to be the one who's wrong. Because if you're the wrong one, you can change your wrongness and you can save your marriage, right? So sometimes, I'm just going to talk about two different categories here because I want to speak to both of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just so ready to say, if you do this a little better or a little more or a little whatever, this person is going to start being nice to you, is going to start facing herself. And yet in your heart of hearts, you really maybe know that's not true, that no matter what you do, you're always the wrong one because that's your spouse's way of getting away from dealing with themselves. And so I have a different message to those people. Okay. And maybe that's where we could do a role play or something about that person in that situation. But then I've had other men who are like, well, wait a minute. Why didn't you say that to me, what you said to the other one? Because to me, you're like, you are not dealing with who you are and your impact. Okay. So a lot of times I talk about one up and one downs. Okay. One up men and women, okay, but we'll just stick with the men for this podcast. One up are very quick to think it's not me, it's you. Look, yes. I get all this right at work, and I can see this, and you're wrong, and I'm so articulate or dominant or whatever. I can, you know, because a lot of one up men marry one down women. It's the yin yang. Okay, we're just doing that, and so I can keep saying she's got a desire problem, she's got a sex problem, and she may. I'm not saying she doesn't. But you use that fact to not deal with what it would actually be like to be married to you. So there are two different orientations to these problems. Are you doing it from one down or one up? And I know a lot of people who are one up who come and tell me that they're the nice guy and the one down. And I'm like, no. Yeah. I mean, yes, you may do nice guy to manipulate and to tell yourself you're better, but you carry around this sense of superiority that she can feel. And then she can, she can use it to justify herself, and it makes you very hard to open up to and to like, to enjoy, to want to be close to. So I think that I work with plenty of one-up people that is they just keep focusing on their partner inaccurately. And so what's happening is they are not dealing with their role in a systemic problem that just keeps repeating itself. And I have to say, I feel sometimes that some of these people cannot see it. Like they can't see it because they almost have a brain impairment where their brain just keeps bringing, it's some version of narcissism, right? And look, I actually think there's a functional kind of narcissism out there when you can believe in yourself and you can take risks and you can go do things, right? So there's something valuable about self-confidence. You can't be a leader without some level of that. But when you're a functional leader, you can also go into, is it I? Is there something here that I'm not seeing, right? What does this quiet person over here know about the situation that I can't see? That's extremely important. And I work with clients sometimes who just seem almost unable to keep their brain on that question. And so they are very difficult to be married to, and they cannot see that they are, right? So that's one category. Then there's this other group. And I want you to be careful because it may not be you, listener. Okay.
Yeah, mine's probably more what you just said, but I want to hear it all. But
yeah.
I love that warning. Heed that warning.
Yeah. But there are people that I've worked with who also may well be successful and so on, who are really married to somebody that just isn't going to deal with herself, or it doesn't even have to be that extreme, that just, that it's, how to say, they're too quick to tiptoe around her anger, her frustration. And so they're not saying what they honestly think to the detriment of the marriage. Like a case that comes to mind where he's the one who's the breadwinner. He's doing well in that domain. His wife, though, kind of runs the marriage from a kind of angry victim place where she feels like he's always coming home late and doesn't help enough or whatever. And so she's often mad, and the conflict is so uncomfortable for him that he's always sort of yielding to it and accommodating it, perhaps resentfully, but he doesn't speak his actual mind about things because it's so hard for him to have her be upset with him. And so the marriage stays immature. And I want to be careful. I don't mean that he is a victim of her. I think they are co-creating a dynamic in which he accommodates her, and it makes him feel quietly superior and it makes her feel more overtly superior, but they aren't collaborating. They aren't bringing honesty and a willingness to look at oneself to create a better marriage, a better sexual relationship, better parenting of the kids, better finances, whatever the situation is. They're managing each other's egos to manage their own sense of self. So I would say to that person, you have to speak more honestly. You have to tolerate the discomfort of invalidation if you're going to get to a better marriage. And it's not because you're right and she's wrong, but there's only one way to find out is if you start speaking what you actually think. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that one hurts a little because I feel like I was the wife in that scenario that you just said. And
Yeah.
it was so painful, and I would have sworn it was all his fault, right? Of
Yeah.
course
Yeah.
I would have sworn
Sure.
it was so painful. And I really had to let the discomfort of that dynamic that we created grow
Yes.
me up. I had to dive all the way, and I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to toot my own horn.
Sure.
Ask my husband, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But when I finally realized whatever he does or doesn't do, I'm just going to look at myself as fully and completely as I can.
Yeah.
It changed everything because
Yes.
I felt so different. And then, as
Yeah.
we know, when we change the energy with which we bring ourselves to something, then it changes the
The
situation.
dynamic.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we can go back to the other side of it,
Sure.
the husband in this case is not willing to deal with the impact they're having, and they're
Yes.
sometimes maybe not even willing to see it. What do you think is most helpful in those moments? Because I think most of my clients have a sense of it. Like,
Mhm.
they don't really
Yeah.
want to look at it, but they have a sense of it. And here's another thing, and you tell me if you think this is true, if you ever see this, is some of those clients also actually don't want their wives to mature and grow up,
That's right.
because then they have to deal with themselves and there's
Yeah.
no other blame. And so it
Yeah.
feels terrible to have her broken because she can't choose him in his mind, but it also feels terrible to have her step
She's strong.
fully choose him, because then he has to face it. And so then he gets
That's right.
caught in the middle. So what do you
Yeah,
think?
because exactly like needy men go and marry needy women. You want somebody who's dependent on you because that will make you feel strong. And I remember when I was young and dating, I had a guy I really liked say to me, but I just don't feel like a man with you. I feel like you're smarter than I am. And I just don't think I could ever do that. Right. And he was being very honest. And I really still like this human being. But it's just, you know, it's the way that men are often socialized. The way you prove you're a strong man is you're dominant, you're on top in a sense. So, yeah, there's a lot of men who, in the name of strength, don't actually want their wife to be free, to be strong, to have a choice. Because would she choose me? Am I enough? Right. And so, as long as you're kind of staying in that one up falseness, you can kind of get away from that question. And so, there's a lot of pressure to stay in that space of self deception.
And the clients I've seen who fall into that category then are often so confused, like baffled that their wife doesn't enjoy the marriage, that their wife doesn't
Right.
enjoy the interactions day to day with.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I sometimes what has helped me in working with clients like that is to get them out of their own self-justified mind and to step to the side a little bit, and to look at, would you want your daughter to marry someone like you, right? Would you, to see that their own father was doing this to their mother or whatever it is, like if they can get away from their own self-justification, they can see it better. Like I can see why my wife wouldn't trust me. I can see why she wouldn't feel safe to open up her vulnerable self to me, right? Because again, strong masculine protects vulnerability and allows it to thrive. And so if she feels like you're going to stomp on it so you feel superior, and people are like, I don't stomp on it. But, I mean, if you're going to judge, critique, whatever, defend yourself, justify, it just becomes easier. Like, let's just not have that conversation ever again. Let's not talk about that anymore. And so couples are really good at staying together, but building these walls because it's just not worth the struggle. It's not worth it. It's just not going to be that kind of marriage, is what people will tell themselves. But they're doing a natural thing, which is guarding themselves, stealing up to kind of get through it. But they're interfering with having a genuine home with one another.
Yes. And then you feel the loneliness of that. And then sometimes my clients will go back into demanding, choose me, love me, because I feel so lonely, not realizing that negative
part of it.
That loop. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm curious if you see this too. Many of my clients are really good at protecting the children, like you were saying, protecting the vulnerable, not realizing that what they're doing and the dynamic with their mother is probably one of the most impactful things that they really are getting.
That's right.
Not always in a positive way.
That's right. 100%. Yes, exactly. I had a client who would do that. He'd like collude with the kids in protecting them from mom's anger, which would only get mom more angry. And mom more, because she felt shut out. She had her own role in this. It's not like he was doing this single-handedly or anything. So it was very easy to keep repeating it. But in the name of caretaking, was actually rejecting his wife and giving them a more angry mother. Okay. Rather than bridging across to his partner and them co-parenting, working together on being honest with each other. He found it easier to have his kids roll their eyes at the mom, roll their eyes to each other and him, right? Rather than go directly and deal with his wife and her anger and his role in that anger. So it was indulgent while he told himself it was good parenting, right? And so this is just one of many iterations of how we delude ourselves. Yeah.
It's so easy to fool ourselves, isn't it? It's easy to do that.
So much so.
I wanted to make sure we do some role play, and you alluded to that earlier, that was okay. I am wondering if we could play it from this role of what we're now speaking to, the person who finds it terribly difficult to see the impact they're having and their inclusion in this dynamic that's really so painful for both of them. I'm thinking of a couple of scenarios. So sometimes I have a client who will come to me and say, I've done all this work, like I've confronted myself, but they're still doing it to change her. But they're doing like lots of different behaviors, but in an effect to get a different response from her. And they'll sometimes come to me, well, I handled it this way, or I did it this way, but she still didn't act differently, which is my first cue that, oh, you're still being transactional, right? You still don't want to face yourself. But I wonder if we could come up with a scenario where you would play the mature masculine here, who is learning to confront yourself when you really are doing some good behaviors.
Yeah.
But it's like you're waking up to the fact of
good. Okay, good.
Okay.
So you're going to be the wife, and you're going to kind of see through that. Even if some things have changed, you have a sense of. Now, we can also have it be a little complicated. Maybe let's see how we can do this. But because what can also happen is the wife can use her fear of opening up to keep a focus on how he's not getting it right. So you can do a little bit of that if you want to. We'll see what we can.
I think that is actually awesome, because it's so common for her to say, no matter what I bring to you, you won't hear it. It's more painful for me. You don't value my opinion anyway. And so I'm going to stop. And then he senses that from her. And so he uses that to say what I'm doing isn't, quote, working, forgetting that he's doing it for himself. But I think that's perfect.
Okay, that's good. What should we have the husband have? What's her main critique or her criticism of him?
That he always thinks that she's the problem, that he talks about sex all the time. She can't get a break of him saying, could we discuss our sex life and all that.
Okay, good. All right. So do you want to just, let's see. Let's say that I have cleaned the kitchen because I want to be more invested.
Love
And
it.
I've heard it's good foreplay. And so I'm hoping that you're going to be in the mood and you're not. Okay.
Perfect. Let's
Okay.
do it.
All right. Hey, I guess I feel like I've been trying really hard to be a better husband and, you know, not taking for granted what you do around here. Like I cleaned up the kitchen tonight and I just feel like no matter how hard I'm trying, you're still not interested. And it's killing me.
Thank you so much for cleaning the kitchen. Actually, I have to get to this lesson that I have to teach tomorrow. I have to teach the kids at church. I just don't want to have this conversation again with you. I get it, but I'm really exhausted and I have to get this done. Thank you for helping me in the kitchen.
Okay, but why can't you do the lesson and also have sex with me? Like, why does that feel like you can't do two things tonight?
If you just clean the kitchen to get me to have sex with you, I'm not really sure what you want. Like, is that what you want from me? To reciprocate with sex when you do something nice?
Listen, I know I've done that. And there is a part of me, if I'm going to be completely honest, that is, yeah, trying to ease your burden so that we can have sex. But I guess I'm still asking this question sincerely, like, why can't you do both? What I mean is, is it not relaxing for you? Is it not something that could be good?
I mean, I don't know why we have to always have this conversation. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's the same for me as it is for you. And I kind of get tired of you bringing it up all the time.
Okay, listen, I really want to be fair to you. It is true, I've been pretty preoccupied with the question of sex, but I have this feeling like even though I'm genuinely caring about you more, genuinely trying to bring better, that it's not really, how to say it, that you can always use the idea that I'm this transactional guy who doesn't really love you to not really deal with the two of us, our sexual relationship, our intimate relationship.
I just feel like you should have married somebody else sometimes. Like, I'm never going to be enough for you, am I? Never.
Kristen, listen to me. I just called you Kristen. I'm calling you that. It's your new name. I want you, girl. You are the one I want an intimate relationship with. You are the person I love. You are the person I want to nail. You, okay? Nobody else. And yeah, I'm cleaning the kitchen because I want you to be freed from it. And because I've sometimes been entitled about that kind of stuff. I don't want to. But like, knock it off with I should have married somebody else. I want an intimate relationship with you.
I wish I could cue the waterworks. I'd probably start crying and be like, I just don't know if I can be enough for you. I know that you want me, but
What do
can
you
I
mean?
be?
Kristen, listen, what do you mean by that? Be enough for me. You are enough for me. You
I
are enough
want
for
to be.
me. What do you mean by that? Be enough for me.
I
You're
guess
brilliant. You're beautiful. You spend too much time on church lessons, but beyond that, look, everything about you is enough for me. What do you mean by that?
I don't know. I guess I've just felt like you always thought something could be better or different, that you'd be happier if I were different. I guess I just have felt that for a long time.
Yeah, I've been an idiot a lot of the time. And yeah, I mean, listen, I run my life very comfortably in a frame of critique. And when I'm dissatisfied, you know better than I do that I go into that kind of externalizing of my feeling bad. I think when I've felt rejected by you, I have often kind of turned it into what's the matter with you, right? And I think you're a sensitive soul, which is what I'm attracted to in you. But I can see why you do take it on and just want to stay away from the likes of me. I get it. I really want to be better. I'm going to screw it up sometimes, but you are what I want. Like, you are the one I like to be with. Being accepted by you is like heaven. Really, it is. And you are my equal. Okay. There is zero question about it. I just manage my sense of being rejected by going into, I'm not the loser, you are. Because it's just an easy place to go. But look, when you don't want me, I feel like the big loser.
Thank you for being honest about that. Sometimes I feel like I'm crazy because when I tell you what I feel, it's almost like you make me feel like it's me. Thank you. Thank you for telling me the truth and what that's like. I finally feel like you get it just a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, just going to make a little side here. I don't know that I would bring this up in this moment, but I do think, I'm just going to stay in the strong masculine, could say at some point, I know all these things are true. I know that I have pushed on your vulnerability when I feel bad. I also think you have used your vulnerability to say, I don't have to choose you. That you can use my overt big jerkness, right? to not care about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am like, despite being ridiculously talented, I am still a vulnerable human. Okay. I am still down inside, like, wonder if I'm lovable. And I think you're the person, right or wrong, who carries the answer to that more than anybody else.
Okay, I'm going to break character with you
Sure.
and just ask a couple questions. I think this is exactly what my clients are going to struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
But when can I say that, Rhonda? Because their brain is going to go to, but there is validity in
Mm-hmm.
the nature in
Mm-hmm.
which she's behaved with me. And it's 100% true. And I love what you said. I probably wouldn't say this now, but there is a place to own that that is true and a place where
Yeah.
you bring it back around. So can you speak more to that? That's what my clients are going to.
Sure. Well, the reason why I wouldn't say it right then is because it's not because it's not true. It's because if I start to go there, I'm taking away from the muscle that actually needs to be strengthened in this moment, which is, you are right. I have handled my vulnerability in this way, and you are not crazy for feeling insufficient with me and feeling like you just have to give me what I want so I'll be happy with you. And I am a part of you feeling that way right now. And listen, I need to tell you the other is true. First of all, that I handle myself that way, and it's not true. You're everything to me, and you are the one I want. Everything about you is enough, right? Because it's true for this mature guy. He really does choose her, and she's being receptive to it. She's not going into, no, 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 I'm not enough. Because if you had gone there in the role play, then I probably would have gone there. I probably would have said, listen to me. I still own that I've done all these things. And I think, like, right now, and too often, you are leaning on this idea that as my victim, you don't have to choose me. Like, I'm strong and you're weak. And I don't buy it. Right. So you didn't go there. And so even though it's still true in the relationship, it's not the time to bring it up, because the thing that needs to happen right now is me reinforcing the clarity about how I go one up to handle myself.
Yes.
Now, let's say in another moment, she's like, listen, you've been making massive improvements, but I still don't feel safe. Okay. Then I might say, hey, listen up.
Yeah.
You're playing weak and it hurts, right? It really hurts. And not, you're playing weak and I get it and you don't. Okay. Because that's going one up. You're playing weak and it hurts. I want you to love me. And I really fear that you won't or can't or something, because I think you can use the idea that because I'm not perfect, you don't have to choose, and it hurts. And I really love you. I really know I'm a part of your defensiveness. I know that I've been playing a role, but I want you to choose me.
Mm-hmm.
So you're speaking to what's happening, but you're not going into you loser. You're staying right there. Like, I'm no stranger to loserness. I also do loser. I've done plenty of it.
What I love about what you just said was you weren't going back into the critique, even when you're coming in with that position.
Yes.
You're still saying, this is what I'm experiencing. And I think that's such an important muscle.
Yeah. Well, the role play mature man is continuing to stay collaborative. He's saying, my goal here is not to be right, is not to prove that I'm not the loser you say I am. Okay, that's all ego, and that's going to get nowhere fast, and it's just going to invite her into defensiveness. He's like, I want a good sexual relationship with you. I understand that I am a part of your guardedness, right? And I understand that I screw it up sometimes. But I also think you are using that fact to not make a choice, to not lean into this relationship. And so that's saying, I'm willing to put the truth on the table, including my part in it, not to manipulate, but because I'm interested in what's true being laid on the table so we can get to what we both want, which is a more peaceful marriage. And I can see you just like she can see him, he can see her. And just going back to the New Testament, you got to get your own beam out of your eye if you're going to actually see your partner's beam. So you got to be willing to put that beam on the table. Absolutely. I'm not going to fight you on that. I have absolutely done those things. But it's not a yeah, but it's a and I see this.
Yeah. I love that. And that's why I actually went distant, like, sorry, I got to go, to I'm broken, one down. But then that's when you acknowledged. And to me, that acknowledgement feels like an invitation. That now I'm approachable. That acknowledgement.
That's right.
Feels
like
like
demonstration of his trustworthiness.
Yes.
Like I'm not going to pretend, I'm not going to make you tell me that this isn't, you don't have to, you're absolutely right. Yeah. But he's not saying it to earn favor. He's saying it to be truthful. And he also then can be truthful about her if it's needed in that moment.
To be knowable.
Yeah.
If we want to pull this all the way back to something you said in the beginning, you said sometimes we come at it with this Thanatos energy of fear. We want to dominate. We want to prevail. And so I'll just say to the listener, if you're trying to have one of these moments where you're being knowable and honest and you feel that fear, you feel that, oh, I need to dominate, or this is going to get out of hand or prevail, that is your indicator that you're about to flip it to the one-up superiority and you're about to be complicit once again in recreating. So I just want to remind of that language you used in the beginning.
It's great. It's great. And it's just a good time to go calm down. What I mean is it sometimes means walking away, not out of anger, not slamming a door, but just, I'm just going to go settle down. I'll come back later when I've got more a hold of my feelings. Because if you start going into that dysregulation, one up is a way out of that dysregulation, but not into a better relationship.
Yeah. Right. It makes you feel like you have more control.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll reiterate one more thing you said as we finish. You told us that first conversation is not the time to turn it back. Like this is something we want to flex our own muscle and practice that first. Yeah. And then there will be another conversation, a different interaction where we might approach like, hey, I think you're maybe using this to not choose me, but that's probably something that comes.
Well, and you want to, like sometimes therapists have said this language, which is you want to get your side of the street cleaned up and you want to get it pretty cleaned up before you start talking about the trash on their side. So that is, if you pick up a few things and then you're like, what about you? Are you going to pick up your trash? You know, you're not actually growing yet. You're just trying to still earn it or achieve it or prevail. So stay focused on your side for a bit. And then you have the strength you need to speak honestly to her side.
Yeah. And on your worst days, you're like, you pick up the trash first. I'll do it after you show me that you will. Right.
Exactly.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Always appreciate you. I'm so grateful. And for our listeners, go check out the retreat. Go to Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife's website and look at all of her offerings. Room for two, all your other things are just so valuable. So thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, we ask that you please rate, review, and share the podcast so that more people can find and benefit from Dr. Jennifer's work.